Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I hope that you all had a good start in 2021. I'm really happy to see you tonight for this first Webmardi of 2021. Before we start, I will make just a little introduction and present you the agenda. So basically, I'll make that introduction. Then we will have the talk. You will be able to ask questions using the chat on YouTube or on Twitch. We will gather all the questions and ask them after the talk. We will present the next Webmardi afterward and talk about a few things at the end of the talk. The Webmardi is an association. It's run by Camille, Nelson, Kevin, and myself. We gather once a month, every first Tuesday. We have for 2021 around 2 talks that are planned already. We already have the speakers, by the way. We are sponsored by Leap and Antistatic. They are giving us contributions so that we can run the whole thing. So thank you to them. We are also a partner of JetBrains and Smashing Magazines. Tonight, we have the pleasure to welcome Nicolas Martin. If we talk about push notification, so we'll hand over the talk to Martin so that he can present himself.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Happy New Year from my side as well. Thank you, Geoffrey, for the kind introduction. Well, my name is Nico. I'm a web developer focused on front-end development and all the modern browser features that are out there. I am 1/3 of Say Hello. We are a small digital agency here in Spiez, so really in the middle, in the center of Switzerland. And we are focused on WordPress websites. So we create custom WordPress themes and plugins for our clients, but also for the WordPress community. And right now, I'm also working as a freelancer already since several months on a e-banking platform based on React. Yeah, but today it's all about push notifications. Yeah, here we go. So push notifications on the web. I'll try to give you a brief overview about the current standing of push notifications on the web. Push notifications are a subtopic of progressive web apps. So I will start with progressive web apps first. And as we are on Webmardi, I think we can all agree that the web is just great. We have this global network of servers. I mean, they are all connected to each other. They're all accessible through the domain name system. They are all talking to each other. And we also have the set of standardized programming languages. So we have JavaScript, we have CSS, and we have HTML. We have a global standard to create digital products. And that's pretty cool because if you think about that, the biggest companies in the whole world, they came together and they created one standard to publish digital products. And in the end, we have this idea of a free and accessible platform to share information. I myself, I am a huge fan of the web, and I think that's just amazing what the web has to offer. Then again, we have another kind of digital products, and those are apps, so native applications. And what about apps? I mean, apps are great as well, no doubt about that. We have a new device. We have the smartphone as a new way to interact with digital products, and the operating system vendors they allow and quite extensive access to the operating system. Problem here is that if we create digital products using let's say the Android or the iOS store, we highly depend on the vendor. That means we are bound to the company policies, we are bound to the languages they offer or to the APIs they offer, which can be quite frustrating. And in the end, we also have to maintain the same software multiple times for multiple platforms. I know there are cross-platform frameworks. I know we can ship the same code base for multiple platforms, but we still need to maintain those 3 versions or those multiple versions of our application. So why would anyone do that? Why would anyone ship a native applications? The problem is pretty clear, and it's the statistics. 87% of the time we spend or the user spends on his phone, he is inside native applications. So only 13% are left for the whole beauty, the whole open web. That's pretty bad. So looking at that number, I think we would all agree that we need to publish native applications. But there's a problem as well. It's very, very hard to gain a spot on the user's home screen. So if we publish an application, a native application, it's unlikely that the user will install that. I think in the same report from 2017, it was like most of the users spend maybe their time in their top 3 apps, and nobody installs new applications all the time. So we have this problem. We need to be inside the app ecosystem. On the other hand, we want to have the web platform as a free and accessible platform. How can we solve that? Luckily, there were some engineers, mostly from Google, but not only. They were looking at that problem, and they identified 4 features why native applications are so much more popular than web applications. Native applications are fast because when the user installs your application and he clicks on the icon, it's there. All the code runs on the device and it's immediately there. That's super, super fast. It's integrated. So a native application really feels like an extension of the operating system. It feels like a part of your device instead of the browser that still is this weird window into the web. It's reliable, which means that even if we don't have a very stable internet connection, a native application is still able to show you something. It's still, it takes control over, or let's say the whole application logic is on your device, so it can work regardless the internet connection. And it's engaging. We have push notifications on native app. I think, no, we have, we have push notifications on native apps, and it's possible to re-engage our users with push notifications. So they were thinking about the next generation of web applications, and they called that progressive web apps. In short, there is one very good blog article by Alex Russell. He is one of the masterminds behind progressive web apps, and he also came up with the name progressive web apps. And he described progressive web apps as websites with a very low entry barrier as websites, just accessible wherever you are. And when the user is using the application, from time to time, he gains more and more access, or the application gains more and more features and access to through the browser, and it progressively becomes an application. That's the whole idea. So, push notifications. What are the advantages of push notifications? I think we all use them on a daily basis, every one of us. In the end, push notifications are a digital implementation of the Hollywood principle. In Hollywood, there was the saying when new actors or actresses tried to get a new role, the agency said, well, don't call us whether you got the role or not. We will call you. They didn't want to answer all those calls. So in the end, what a push or what a notification does is exactly the same. You don't need to go to WhatsApp or to your email client every minute or every hour to check whether you got new emails or messages. It will inform you if something happens. Also, from a marketer perspective, it's quite important, or it's quite easy to create a precise targeting. You can target a specific user or a specific group of users. We can ship specific content for this user group. This will improve the conversion rate, and in the end, we also are able, through push notifications, to add real value. It's not just for spam. You can add real value with push notifications. So how do we implement push notifications with the web? Quite easy. We have the Notifications API, and the Notifications API is in the end an API that allows the browser to display a notification on the device. So each, or at least each mobile device has a notification system, and the Notifications API is now a browser API that provides a standardized way to access this notification system. How can it be done? We have this little code snippet here. First, we need to ask for permission. I will get to that later, but without permission, we can't show a notification. If that's granted, we can just call new notification with some parameters like a title with body, icon, a badge, whatever. There's some parameters, and sometimes they vary from platform to platform, but that's it. This code will display notification. We're done. Great, right? There's one problem, and the thing is, this code is completely useless. Why? Because the notification will be shown as soon as this code runs, and or at least I can't think of a valid reason why you should show a notification to a user that is right now in this moment using your application. So we need a more asynchronous way to show a notification, and that's where we need the service worker. If we look at this website, I have here just an example, Wikipedia. We have some JavaScript, and I think we can all agree that JavaScript has developed extremely from a simple DOM manipulation language to a fully featured programming language, which means that we can write our whole application logic in JavaScript. But JavaScript has one problem. As soon as we close the tab, or as soon as we close the site or the browser, it's dead. So we can't interact with an application that is not active at the moment. So as soon as we close it, it's just the JavaScript, all the events are just dead. The service worker is now also JavaScript, but it lives in a separate scope. We can register a service worker, and it controls then a site or a scope, and it lives there, not in the Windows scope, but in a separate service worker scope in the browser. Most important thing is it lives there forever. So if it's registered once, it won't just die if you close the site or if you close the browser. It's still there, it's idle, and it's awaiting for events. Little piece of code, we can register a new service worker using navigator.serviceworker.register inside our application. There we have a set of events. We have, for example, an install event, an activate event, and a fetch event. The fetch event is quite powerful because we can use a service worker as a proxy for all the requests. So each request goes through the service worker and also comes back from the network through the service worker. So it allows a lot of manipulation there, but that's content for a different talk. The thing we will focus now is the push event. We can listen to the push event. To wrap it up, service worker is registered in the browser in a separate scope. It has its own event system, and it remains active, or I think we should say it remains idle. It's not active because it's just waiting there, even if the page or the browser is closed. So what do we want to achieve? That's the thing we want. We have an application backend, and we want to send a notification to the client. Now, since our code is not, our site is not running at the moment, it's not possible to do it directly. We need a different service that's called the push service. Each browser and also each device has its own push service. So for example, Android and Chrome uses the Firebase cloud messaging Firefox uses Mozilla Push Service. Edge uses Windows Notification Service, and there's also a service for Apple, but we will have a look at the whole Apple problem at the end. So we have the service, and with the service, we have now a way to reach out to our to the client. One thing we need for that is the Push API. The Push API has two main responsibilities. First, it gives the web application the ability to receive messages pushed to them from the server, or let's say from the push service, and it handles so-called push subscriptions. What is a push subscription? We have here a piece of code. We are inside our application JavaScript, and there we first need to get the server-circuit registration, which means that there needs to be an active service worker or an active service worker controlling our site. We need that because we can then create the subscription with this pushmanager.subscribe method. We have two parameters. First is user visible only, and that needs to be true at the moment. So each push needs to end in a notification, so we can't do a silent push at the moment. And we need to provide a so-called application server key. It's a base64 encoded VAPID public key, and we will get to the VAPID specification in the next slide. But with this pushmanager.subscribe, we create a subscription, and this subscription consists of an endpoint, which is an URL to, in that case, it's fcm.google API, so it's a URL to the push service, to the Firebase messaging, and with a unique endpoint ID, and we have a set of keys. That's the whole subscription. VAPID is short for Voluntary Application Server Identification, and the whole thing is each notification we send via a push service should be signed and encrypted. So not even the push service should be able to read the content of our notification. That's why we need this public-private key pair, this VAPID spec that generates the public-private key pair. And now we have the private key to authenticate against the push service, and we have the public key and the public key that we need to create the push subscription. It will get more clear on the next slide, but first, why is it called voluntary? The thing is, we don't need to identify as a service or as a developer person or a company. We can use it just as a anonymous public-private key pair to just, whenever we have a subscription that is generated with a public key, it matches the private key. So how does that look? First, we have the VAPID public key, and we will send that key to the website to create the subscription. That's the first step. We can then take that subscription, we can send it back to our application backend, and then we would save that inside our database. Let's say we have user A, he's logged in as user A, and he creates a subscription. We will then store that subscription in the database of user A, for example. Now, if user B tries to send a message to user A, let's say we have a chat application or whatever, the application backend will receive that message and will then look for the subscription. And with the subscription, it's now possible to send a notification via the push service to the client. As you can see here, all the data is encrypted, and we need the private key to identify. So, and the push service will then check whether the subscription matches the private key and will forward it to our client. Now, our client, our website, might not be active, but we have this thing, we have the service worker, and the service worker is there idle and is waiting for the push event and can then display the notification. That's the whole thing. Now, how do we show a notification inside our service worker? As I said before, we have the push event. There we can get the payload from the data or from the push that we received. And we can then call this show notification method, which works exactly like in the notifications API. We have the title, we have some parameters, and that will then show the notification. We can also listen to events. We have the notification click and the notification close, so we can interact with the user, whether he clicks or he closes the notification. So one problem, and I think that was the fun part as a developer, now we're going to the hard part. We're looking at the user experience, because I think most of us are familiar with this little browser prompt where every second news website wants to send you push notifications. And that prompt is very bad, but in the end, we need to have, or let's say the browser needs to be absolutely sure that the user wants to receive that push notification. So whether you take the push manager.subscribe method or the show notification or even the notifications API, the user always has to explicitly accept that, so the browser will show that notification. This unfortunately ends with examples like this. If you go to tagblatt.ch, the first thing that the website asks is whether it can send the push notification or not. And that's quite bad on desktop, but it's even worse on mobile, because there that prompt takes the whole screen. So it forces you to make a decision the first time you enter that website. And that's just horrible user experience, I'd say. Why is that so bad? We have zero context. Maybe we were browsing on Facebook or Twitter and we have seen an interesting article. We clicked on the article. We have never been on that website before, and upfront it asks us whether we want to receive push notifications or not. So we have no idea what this page is all about, and we will not accept that. That's for sure. It interrupts the intention of the user. So I wanted to read that article. I didn't want to play around with any browser settings. It forces a decision. I need to make a decision just now. And the worst thing of all is that once it's blocked, it's very difficult to change it later. So we can't say like, okay, in the first step, we will just have this very bad user experience, but maybe in half a year, we will create a very cool user experience for that onboarding process. That won't work, because once it's blocked, the user needs to go to the browser settings and accept it or activate the push notifications there, or grant the permission there. And that's quite good luck if you want to convince the user to go to the browser settings. So that's bad, and I think we can do better. First of all, the browser vendors are already working on a solution. So on Firefox 72 and on Chrome 80 plus, there is a new quiet web push notification UI. It's not the prompt anymore, it's just a little icon. And in Firefox, I guess, in Firefox it's auto-enabled in Firefox it's auto-enabled, and in Chrome, they will check whether your site has a high disallow rate, and if so, it will only show the quiet prompt instead of the real browser prompt. I mean, it's cool that the vendors are already working on a solution, but it's also on us to create a seamless user experience. And there are very good examples. For example, we have Twitter. There's on mobile.twitter.com, there is a progressive web app Twitter client. And there we have this little box in our feed that pops up from time to time. And the cool thing here is, I mean, we are logged in, we are using the service, so it's pretty clear what this site is all about. And then it asks us, and there it does not just show the prompt, it asks us in a nice way. And if we then want to activate push notifications, it will then show the notification prompt. But that's the last step in the whole user interaction. Also on WhatsApp Web, we have this blue box on the upper left corner with the same ID here. And I've created a little side project last December. So I've created that PW Advent calendar, which shows a progressive web app feature each day. And there I also implemented push notifications, and there I had a little, let's say a little menu entry push notifications. If you click on that, I have first a little prompt that explains why it would make sense to accept push notifications and what's the benefit, and also how you could then unsubscribe later. And the cool thing here, I mean, over those 24 days, I was then able to send it was around 10,000 push notifications. So the acceptance rate was pretty high. So to provide a good user experience, in my opinion, we need, or the benefit for the user has to be obvious. So it needs to be clear why it makes sense, or how the user can benefit from my push notifications. And also that's not only for the push notifications, it's very important. It's for all kinds or all types of browser permissions. Also, if you need access to the camera, you would never ask just upfront on load whether you can use the camera. You will ask that only if the user, if it's clear for the user why how we can benefit. The scope must be clarified, so it has to be clear how often you send push notifications, and also it must be clear how the user can then unsubscribe. So I have another example. Last spring, we created a little application for Eurorelief. Eurorelief is the organization behind the refugee camp in Moria. And a friend of mine, Tim Schoch, was there to help for a couple of months, and he is a UX designer, so he had the idea that, he has seen a lot of problems with the communication between the organization and the people, because everything is based around tickets, so it's very hard for them to get a notification whenever they get a new ticket, or they get a new appointment or whatever. And also it was very hard for them to communicate new COVID-19 measures. And so our idea was to create this notification system that provides a trustworthy communication. And the idea was to just prevent rumors, insecurity, or panic during the pandemic. It's all open source, so we have the backend on GitHub and also the front end on GitHub. The problem here was, one day after we launched the beta phase of our application, there was a huge fire in the camp. It was they had their first COVID-19 cases and needed to lock down part of the camp, and that created a big insecurity, let's say. And so the whole camp burned down, and right now they're let's say they have other problems than distributing a notification system. But the idea was quite great, and with this progressive web app, we had a really low entry barrier for the whole onboarding process. And we were able to send push notifications to, let's say, groups of users or just specific users when they have something. So with that example, I will go to the browser support. The browser support for the web notifications API is quite good. It's supported by all major browsers, also Safari. For the push API, you can see there is a big problem because it's supported by Chrome, Firefox, and Edge, but it's not supported by Safari, and it's not supported by the iOS Safari. And that's a huge problem. There's generally a very difficult relationship, let's call it like that, between Apple and progressive web apps. There are very small steps towards progressive web apps. So right now, there are no signals whether or when push notifications are supported by Apple or iOS devices. And the biggest problem of all is that Apple still has this WebKit constraint. So you can't use a different engine than WebKit on iOS. So even if you use a Firefox or a Chrome on iOS, it's still powered by the WebKit engine. So that makes it impossible to implement new progressive web app features to Safari or to iOS in general without Apple or without the consent of Apple. And I personally think that's very, very bad for the whole web ecosystem because we have, in the end, we have this vendor lock. So if Apple is not happy with a feature, they just won't implement it to WebKit, and we can't use it on iOS. If they would just allow real engine choice, so that maybe Chrome or Google could create a real Chrome for iOS, then we had a real choice. So the user could choose whether they wanted to use the Safari on iOS or the Chrome on iOS. But how it is like right now with this WebKit constraint, it's just very bad for the whole web ecosystem. There are 2 links there. Also, all my slides will be online right after the talk, so you have all the links there. The first is the bug track from WebKit. There is already a bug, and the second is the change.org petition. If you have any use case where you absolutely need to have push notifications, or where your web application could benefit from push notifications, it makes a lot of sense to just publish it there. So maybe, and I really hope in the near future, Apple will change their policy there. Yeah, as I said, right now there are no signs whether or when, but one good thing also, when we had service workers, it wasn't clear whether or when they would support service workers for a long time. And when they then decided to support it, it took them only a couple of months, a couple of weeks. So if they want to, it will be fast. But right now it's just, yeah, we don't know how this will evolve. So that was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them now. And also, I'm quite active on Twitter, so you can just ask me there. Yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Thank you for that great explanation on service workers, push notification, and all the experience you shared during that talk.
Was a pleasure.
We have a few questions. Okay, so first question, which come from the chat: which product or third party would you recommend to ease push notification integration?
Well, my first the good thing is, with push notifications, we don't need to use a third-party provider. And that's the cool thing, because it is a web standard. We can just use, there is a web push implementation for every language, Java, PHP, Node.js. There are already implementations that you can just use for free. And you can just send, as I said, I mean, I've sent 10,000 push notifications in those 24 days, and it cost me nothing. And it didn't went through a third-party provider. But there are some providers that or also provide stuff like analytics and so on. And one provider I've used once is OneSignal. I think they also have implementations for multiple CMS or also multiple frameworks. So it makes it quite easy to use push notifications with OneSignal.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Do you know any successful progressive web app that replace native apps?
That's a good question. Well, yes, there are some web applications, or the thing here is there's always the question, what is a progressive web app and what is just a website? And I think there is no strict boundary between a website and a progressive web app. It's just both are just web applications, both are just websites. And the idea of progressive web app is to enrich web applications, so you don't need to go, or don't need to download applications from a store. One thing, for example, I used Adobe Premiere Pro for a long time before, and I switched now to Clipchamp, is it called? And that, for example, is a video editing tool in the browser. So you can just edit your videos in the browser, and you don't need to use all the progressive web features in one application. For them, for example, it doesn't make sense to send push notifications. Why should they? That's not a feature they need to offer. But for example, they use a lot of other stuff like WebAssembly, like add to home screen functionalities and stuff. So I can use Clipchamp just with the same user experience as I've used Premiere Pro before, and it runs in the browser. Or another example is the the image editing tool by the Google dev team. How is it called? Squoosh, where you can just edit images right in the browser, and it's way more powerful than the photo editing tool that comes with Windows, for example. So there are quite cool examples where you can just use browser applications to with the same user experience as native applications. Or also Twitter. I mostly use the mobile Twitter, the mobile.twitter.com application instead of the native application, because it's way smaller. It has a lot of the same features, and that works great for me.
Okay, well, those examples are really great. Thank you very much. Oh, long question. What about push on progressive web apps installed on mobiles? Do we have to use FCM for Android to be able to push, or can we only use the push notification for web offered by OneSignal or Pusher, for example?
Yeah. The problem, or that not a problem, Firebase Cloud Messaging is a service by Firebase, but it's also the push service of Android and Chrome. So when I say or let's say for my PW Advent calendar, I did use FCM, but I did not use the service for Firebase Cloud Messaging. I just used the browser implementation of the push API that would then trigger the endpoint of FCM to reach an Android device. For me, it was hard to understand where's the what's the difference between the Firebase Cloud Messaging service and what's the let's say the Chrome and Android implementation of the push service. So in the end, OneSignal also has to use FCM if it wants to send a notification to an Android or a Chrome. But it's just they just use it as an endpoint, And as I said, it's encrypted. If you have on your backend, if you have the web push library installed, it will encrypt your message. So even FCM is not able to decrypt your message.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question. Is that possible to allow people to unsubscribe from notification from the website UI instead of browser settings?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one way you could do is, let's say, you have the push subscription and that's stored somewhere in your database. And the easiest thing would just be to remove the push subscription from your database through an API call. Let's say you have on the front end, you have a little unsubscribe button that will trigger a delete push subscription for that specific endpoint and will just then delete the push subscription. But I'm pretty sure there's also a way to, I'd need to look it up, but I think with PW Advent, I just unregistered the subscription. And I think there's also a call for that. It should be quite easy, yes.
Okay, so we can do that from the website UI.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is a notification always a message to be displayed, or could it be sent to sync to indicate the worker to call back the server?
Yeah, I think right now it needs to trigger a notification. That was the first parameter in the create subscription method. I think at the moment it needs to trigger a notification, but there are projects or ideas that that you have a way to, as you said, to trigger a sync event or something like that. But at the moment it needs to display notification.
Okay. What resources do you recommend for push notification of Service Worker?
First of all, I would recommend my project, pwadvent.dev. It's pwadvent.dev. Because that was quite cool, because I created the project just to showcase a feature a day, and I then went out to the community, maybe if somebody would be interested to write an article as well. And I've got so many feedback that most of the articles are not written by myself, but from developers all over the community. There were developers from Microsoft, from Google that participated on that project. And each day showcases one feature in a really short way. So it's just a little introduction with some further links. It's not, let's take Service Worker. You won't find a tutorial how to write the Service Worker, register everything. It's just more or less a short introduction with the with further links. So
okay,
another good resource is also web.dev. The guys from Google, they make an amazing job in showcasing all those technologies. So for myself, I always use web.dev for if I need to, or if I have any questions about a feature.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Progressive web app installed on mobile could be considered as an instance of the browser, or is it an independent app?
It's always an instance of the browser, and that's the cool thing. Let's take Electron as an example. We have so many web applications that are inside an Electron container, and you would just ship the web application inside Electron, and then you have megabytes of duplicated code on your machine because you have multiple Electron applications. And Progressive Web App tries to, you have the browser as a platform for your application, and it's everything you do with Progressive Web App. Every Progressive Web App will run in an instant of the browser, and in an instant of that code of that application you have on your device already. and I think that's the cool thing. So it's a browser. It's just a browser inside a very minimal frame. Let's say there's no URL bar, there's no navigation bar or anything. It's just the whole place is for your application, but in the backend or in the background, it's still Chrome or still a browser that powers that application.
Okay, thank you. Last
Cool.
question. You said that you've been working for that association. What's the name again?
Euro Relief.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
You go ahead.
It was a side project. So Tim was he knew those guys, and it was just we had the idea, and we had during the first lockdown we had a lot of time, so we just created it, and we then got access to the database for all the stuff we couldn't do ourselves, and they then started with the distribution. But well, that was just one day before. It is really the day we launched the beta was the day they had the first case, and 2 days after was the big fire and it was all destroyed.
Is there a way to donate?
Yes, there is. There was a domain helpmorianow.com, I guess. But I will post that link somewhere if you want to donate. Right now the conditions are terrible with the snow and everything. Maybe you have seen that in the news. So I think they can need any help that they will get.
Yeah, maybe some people would be interested in that.
Yeah, I will post the link somewhere.
Okay, thanks. Good. Okay, so I will again thank you very much, Nico, for your talk. That was really awesome, really well structured.
Thank you.
On my side, that was a really nice introduction. And according to the reaction in the chat, all the people are really happy about your talk. So thank you.
That's cool. Great.
Awesome. So we'll go back to the presentation, the Webmardi presentation. Okay. Kevin, can you put my screen? Yeah, all good. So, the next Webmardi will happen in February. We will have a talk about CMS, Sulu CMS, which is based on Symfony, PHP framework, and Thomas Schedler, sorry, is one of the contributor of that product. So he will give you an introduction about the feature and what you can do when using Sulu CMS. It will be on live, as again on YouTube or on Twitch, and you can already have a look on our website and subscribe to the meetup page so that you can have all the information about the talks. Leap, one of the sponsors, is looking for some talent to hire. They're looking for PHP developers in Lausanne as well as in Fribourg. They're also looking for front-end developer in Fribourg. So if you're interested, just go on leap.ch/jobs and submit your application there. And don't forget to mention the Webmardi so that they know that it brings them something. You can always watch again the videos on our YouTube channels. Right now we have the videos from from 2019 and 2020. So we have a bunch of videos there. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified when we release a new video or when there will be a new live. And I guess that's it. And I hope to see you all on the 2nd of February. And if ever you have any question, request, don't forget to ask us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and of course YouTube. We are happy to answer your question, and thank you very much for. Oh, there is a new subscriber. Great. And we are always happy to have you all watching the Webmardi. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye.